Hello,
Cosmo Sarson.
Mr. Rec, how are you?
Can you believe it? Look, Frequency Jam's got Cosmo Sarson. I mean, this is what happens. It's sort of a bit weird, isn't it? We're just talking to two cameras on tripods, and then we have to pretend that it's sort of YouTube out there. So, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while because I've seen some pieces of yours, but I've not seen much of you. You've gone strictly underground, and I know you have a really good day job, one that perhaps people would be envious of as a painter. Something about scenic painting. What is this?
Yeah, so I work in films. I'm a scenic artist, and I work mainly out of Pinewood, Shepperton, Leavesden film studios, and I work on most of the major films in production. That'd be all the Marvel movies, the Bonds. Now they've stopped, but more feature films are made over here than people realise. So I work on film sets, and that can range from anything from working on a Jason Bourne or Children of Men or something where I have to do graffiti on the backgrounds, to what else have I done? Star Wars, where I'm just painting Go Faster stripes on spaceships, to period films where I'm painting tapestries.
I didn't think they still did. I thought it would all be CGI.
No. So that's all the backings. But I have managed to found myself a little corner in the film world where stuff needs to be painted, and it's be it decor, murals, frescoes, illustration. Graphics. There's always some little bit on a film that needs painting, and I paint all of those. So if a character is in a story as an artist, I'm the hand that draws the sketchbooks for the artist. If there's graffiti in the background of a film, they have to cover up. If say they're shooting in Brick Lane or something like that, they have to cover up all that graffiti for copyright reasons. So I have to cover it up and invent new tags and graffiti for background locations. And then if it's a period film like The Favourite or whatever, if it's some Tudor film, then I'm over painting sort of old master portraits of the actors, or doing tapestries, or and then the Mummy. So for example, someone's there painting all the hieroglyphics and stuff. I do all that. It's stuff you never see. I spend months doing it, and I've never seen any of my work. It's invisible.
But it's in a passing shot.
It's just, but it needs to be there to look real. So I do that sort of stuff. So I could name drop forever, but a lot of superhero films, all the Marvel stuff, Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know. There's a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I've sort of run out of steam a little bit. I don't know what I've worked on.
It's good work. How did you get into it?
Through a pal of mine, Nick Walker, who Nick's an old pal from years ago. He was he'd always find an angle on something. He phoned up Pinewood Studios to see what films were on. He literally just phoned up Pinewood Studios, asked for the reception. They said, what films are being made? And at the time, I think they were making Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. And so Nick asked to speak to the production designer, got in touch with him, and then Nick ended up doing the graffiti through Eyes Wide Shut. He told me he'd done this, and I was like, well, that sounds pretty simple. So I did the same thing. Phoned up Pinewood Studios, went along with the portfolio, and this is in the days before emails and websites. You could physically meet someone, show them your book, and they'd find somehow to squeeze you into a film. So I did that, and then 20 years later, I've worked on over 40 films, and I'm now reasonably well known in that industry. I say reasonably, there's only a half dozen of us or so that do this sort of thing.
Wow.
Working across all the films that are being made that year. It's thanks to Nick Walker that gave me that shout. And then other pals like Minto and Inky and various other pals, I've got into the graffiti stuff, and we all do. There's a calling for it.
Did you start off doing graffiti? I mean, you obviously being an artist all your life.
Only because I'm that generation. So I'm 52, 53, I guess. So when electro and hip hop came out, 81, 82, 83, I'm there around sort of 12 years old or something, stealing spray cans from body repair shops and putting up my little pre-teenage years tags and stuff that I see my son doing now, funnily enough. So I did it, and it was when breakdancing graffiti first came out. So
was this in London?
This was in London. So I did it then, and I kept it going. And then 16, I went to art school, and then a very traditional art school, Barnshaw School of Art, which was the sister school to the Slade. So I was then taught life painting in a certain school of painting, which was the William Coldstream Slade School of Painting, which is very much flat colours used to describe a space bending, but just doing it in colour rather than in tone. So I was taught to paint like that. And then I got sucked into fine art and painting. Is painting dead with the advent of photography? And I got sucked into those sorts of ideas. And then my work became very less about the technique and almost more about the theory. And I got wrapped up in that sort of stuff. So as much as my roots are in graffiti, I sort of moved away from them and then went into the fine art world or the more fine art theory. And that just put a little spin on me, and I came out of that having studied fine art, and then kind of went back to my breakdancing roots, my graffiti roots, and then did a series of self-portraits. And I was snapped up by Levi's. I did an interview on a Channel 4 program called Bored Stupid, which was a snowboarding program. And I'd done loads of paintings of snowboarders. Anyway, I got on Channel 4. Then I got a phone call from Levi's, and then they asked me to do an exhibition at their flagship store on Regent Street. And that's when I presented a series of self-portraits of myself breakdancing in front of graffiti.
Oh, so you're a breaker as well?
Yeah. So I got a pal of mine to take some photos of me breakdancing in front of the Tufnell Park Graffiti Hall of Fame, in front of this graffiti. And then I created a series of paintings based on those photographs that were done on canvas, but they were photo real. And then the funny thing is that as much as they were almost paintings of paintings, so paintings of a scene with graffiti in it, but painted photo real. And then that got into a book called Scrawl, written by,
I remember Scrawl,
with Rick Blackshaw, I think was the author, and Liz something. So they ended up in a book. But the funny thing was that this exhibition, Fume came down, who was like the top level tagger at the time, and then started tagging over a painting of a wall of graffiti, and then added his tag to the wall of graffiti, which was, it added to the whole idea of a painting that's then been tagged over. So anyway, moved on from graffiti, did art school, got sucked up into art history, art theory, and then started trying to come up with a validification for painting. So trying to find a reason to paint in the face of arguments that painting is dead. And so using that idea, I then started creating paintings that were advertisements. And this was in the time of Pepsi Max were doing a big advertising campaign on snowboarding, and they were using my culture, my youth culture, to sell cans of soft drinks. So I adopted that branding strategy to sell paintings. So I turned my own logo, my own signature, Cosmo, I turned that into a logo, I turned that into a brand, and then my paintings themselves then became advertisements for that brand. And so it was a kind of like a subterfuge or a way of conceptually making paintings that weren't actually paintings because they were advertisements, but also it was a comment on the commercialism of art. So, for example, someone would buy a Damien Hirst simply because it had Damien Hirst written on it, or someone buys, at the time, Banksy was unknown, but then people start buying a Banksy because his branding's so fucking strong, not because of the art itself, but because it's got Banksy written on it. So I started making paintings that had Cosmo written on it. It's all about the brand, and the subject matter of the paintings were aspirational things like snowboarding or breakdancing, or I was turning it on its head. So the whole idea of how do you sell something? You make something aspirational. So how do I make my paintings aspirational? I use the same tricks as the advertising industry. Take something that's really trendy, possibly from youth culture or probably from youth culture, make that aspirational, put a logo on it, then you have a brand, you have a range. And then that idea then developed, sorry, this is a very quick catch up, into the idea of creating paintings in much the same way that a fashion designer would bring out seasons. So every year would be a new season. So this year, the trendy thing is dinosaurs. Jurassic Park had come out. So I did a series of Jurassic Park paintings with the Cosmo logo on it.
And there are examples of this on your website.
Yeah, you'll find it. I'll put some. Maybe I haven't put the Jurassic Park ones up, but there's definitely some examples up there. So Wonder Bra. So this is 90s. So Wonder Bra brought out an ad campaign, and this is pre Me Too movement. I'm not sure it would work, but it was. Patent and Loaded magazine, and it was very much the lad movement, and so I did a series of paintings that were advertisements for myself with the strap line like, I don't do landscapes, and then the image was of a femdom cracking a whip with her high heel in the mouth of a substrate man on the floor, or admit it, I'm a masterpiece was another strap line I came up with, and this huge page 3 model like that looking super fit, and then the strap line was a new name in painting, a new label in art, Cosmo Sarson. and it was just, I got sucked into the advertising.
Which is working, this idea of yours, this sort of way of getting out there.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
Did it have success?
Did it? No, but
sales and things?
No, not well. It was pre-social media, but I didn't really care because it was like I knew I had an idea that nailed society at that time. It was ironic. It was political. And it was a comment on consumer society, and it was on a comment on the fickle nature of the art world at that time. There was so much work being put up in art galleries that was fucking shit, but because gossip had got round that fucking so-and-so's good, they'll just buy that stuff because it's so-and-so with no real critique put on it. And it's a bit like fucking Trump, for example. If the word gets round, people stop criticising it because they're so in awe of the name.
Or it could be that it actually can't stand analysis.
Yeah.
interesting to hear a bit of a summing up of this as your early years.
So that was the art school years, yeah. And then, so after art school, signed on for about 3 years. Got picked up by Levi's, did the Channel 4 program, and worked with Rankin on Dazed and Confused. I did did an illustrated fashion story for Dazed and Confused magazine, and then I got bored shitless with signing on and being skint. I thought, fuck this, I'll go into advertising, which my painting was about anyway. And then I went into advertising. I worked as an art director with a copywriter and wrote ads and wrote some famous billboard campaigns and picked up some big clients. Then got laid off. And then I had a phone call out of the blue about 5 or 6 years later, after I'd done this original series of breakdancing self-portraits, from a guy who was a stockbroker. And he phones me up and he asked me what I'm doing. And I said, look, I'm really skint. I'm unemployed. I haven't really got a life. I've got no job. He said, well, look, I bought your painting 6 years ago. How do you fancy this idea? And he said, get yourself a studio, go and paint, and I'll just buy everything that you produce until you become successful.
That's the sort of person you want, isn't it? In your life, as an artist.
I was like, great. I was fucking skint. And then this phone call comes up and he says, get yourself a studio. I'll pay the rent and just anything you make, I'll buy it. And he said, the only one catch is it has to be hip hop orientated. And so after not having painted for 6 or 7 years, I went into a studio completely out of ideas. And I was like, oh, hip hop. Oh, what the fuck do I do? And I got really pissed up. And I was reading the Evening Standard one afternoon. There's this little article about a Polish youth group breakdancing in the Vatican. And I was looking at this tiny photo. I was a bit sort of squiffy-eyed. It looked like there was this guy dancing naked in the Vatican and the Pope sat on his throne looking at him. I thought, that looks like Jesus. And I had a joke with a pal about it. And then a couple of weeks later, and it's not, you think, oh, what should I do with that idea? And it was a bit of a one-liner in a pub. I thought, fuck it. It's hip-hop related. I've got a studio. Let's see if this works. So I found a break dancer who asked to model for me. I dressed him up in a wig and a loincloth, and it was in Dalston. It was outside this kebab shop called the Mangal Brasserie. I laid a bit of cardboard down this little alleyway. And he started breakdancing in nothing but his loincloth and his wig. And it was really funny. People were just walking past going, fuck me, I've just gone down a side alley and Jesus is breakdancing outside a kebab shop.
Why did you do it out on the street?
Because I didn't have any space in my studio and it was a sunny day. So we just laid a bit of cardboard out on the street. So he started breakdancing, and then all the photos from that afternoon I then used as the basis for the paintings and the silk screens that I then did afterwards.
Well, this is when I first heard of you, I think. The Breakdancing Jesus is probably similar with a lot of people that would be interested to watch this. Breakdancing Jesus. I mean, obviously you were doing canvas versions of this and prints, and then
it was an oil painting. So as I said before, all based on this stupid afternoon I'd had in the pub, and I thought, fuck it. So I turned it into an oil painting that had a little interview with some website, and they uploaded the high res version. Next thing I knew, it got picked up by Reddit, and then it went viral. And so suddenly there's fucking my high res photo of the painting was then all across the internet, just getting shared left, right, and centre. And I'd lost control of the image. And I couldn't, as much as I'd send an email to someone saying, take that down, I've got the copyright, it just went bonkers. And then I was like, well, how do I monetize this idea? Because by that time, it had almost become a meme. And so I did a print release, that sold out. Great, I made a couple of £100 off it. which was nothing compared to the millions of times that the thing had been shared. I remember going onto Google. At one point, I had 11 images of a Google search engine for Jesus. The first 11 pages were just my image. So then I won a competition. There was a public art competition in Bristol to paint a wall. I'd never been there. I'd submitted this idea, and then I won the competition, and then discovered it was opposite a Banksy, and that was a gable end wall, which is when I painted the 30-foot high mural of Breakdancing Jesus, and then. Because it was opposite one of Banksy's last remaining public art murals, and maybe because it was Breakdancing Jesus, Associated Press turned up, and whoever the photography agents is, Reuters or someone like that, took a couple of snaps. I was really hungover, did an interview, and then suddenly the next morning I woke up and it was international news. It made the Bristol Post, and then it was in the Guardian, it was in the Independent, it was in the Times, and I was like, what the fuck? So I was just really fortunate, and I think it was just a stupid idea that people liked, and they saw the funny side of it, and then that set me up for a big fall. Because a bit like the Beatles going, we're bigger than God, or what? We're bigger than Jesus. Yeah. I was then like, well, what can be more funnier than Jesus breakdancing? Well, it's got to be God breakdancing. But how do so I then had a really difficult second album, and I had to go into hiding for a little bit and work out, other than this one line joke, what is my art really about? So that's taken a while, plus having a kid and some ill health. I had to sort of take a little step back from my work. So I've been out of street art, and I've been out of making art for myself for probably about coming up to sort of 6, 7, 8 years now. And it's taken it's taken a lot of work to get a new idea going.
Let's just have a little pause there.
Great, because I need a wee.
Good. The next time I'd heard of you was when you moved to Brighton, and then you did that, the Brighton Angel, as I would call it.
Yeah. So I'd only been in Brighton for about 6 months. Yeah.
And you found that end wall and just got on with it.
Yeah. So I'd been in Brighton 6 months.
Yeah.
Was talking to a pal who knew an owner of a building and got a wall, and it was quite a tasty wall, I suppose.
I think it was, yeah.
And it was in the same street as Arrow's wall. I believe that is his territory.
It was at the time. It's all been built on now.
Yeah, and yes, I did a wall, and I don't think there was anything particularly special about it, other than the fact that I used shitloads of glitter on it.
I remember this. PVA and glitter.
And also, I think the other thing that has always stood me out, or has always worked in my favour, is not using spray cans. And using 4-inch brushes and just having really good brushwork.
Was it acrylic or is it emulsion?
Just household emulsion. Well, not it's scenic art emulsion. It's got more pigment in it, but people are always a bit more impressed, I think, weirdly, that you using brushes, because I think it's a bit of a throwback to the past when they see loads of people using spray cans, and then you're up there with a roller and using brushes. And,
it more resembles traditional fine art.
yeah, maybe they can get their head around it a bit easier. Yeah, and I've got fucking pots of, fans of brushes. And
it's quite a chunky style, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Must be these.
Well, that's it. It's all a 6-inch brush, chunk, chunk. And I guess I like a solid brush stroke. I'm not very good at blending, so I've always broken stuff down into marks.
Was this to do with the college you went to, and that?
Yeah, quite possibly, but also just partly down to me. Yeah, I'm not a soft mark maker. I don't, smudging and blending and stuff. I'm more of a Lucian Freud man. I'm like, yeah, look, there you go. There's a sexy. You can almost hear it as you paint it.
I was quite impressed by that. You'd left that bottom bit and you weren't going to bother even painting it because you knew.
Yeah, that was Tagtown down there. So yeah, you just know not to bother with stuff that's within arm's reach, and also it was so fucking big. Yeah. They were never going to get up into the important details. So yeah, you got to know where Tagtown is.
But then it got built in front of, so I presume it's still there behind somebody's.
It is, and I got a photo from a carpenter who was building. It was a gable end wall, and then they built some flats on top of it, and there were a couple of joists that went across top and bottom. And it was just before they slapped the plasterboard on, but it was just a really sweet spot. Whoever owns that flat, whenever they take the plasterboard and the rock wall down, they'll just see this golden angel right behind.
I just thought that would be just such a brilliant place to get and to just reinstate it.
Yeah. So yeah, potentially they could literally just do that.
Amazing. And then of course, as you're supposed to do, you got some nice prints made with a bit of gold leaf.
That's it, as you're supposed to do. Do a wall, do a print release. That's how it works.
I mean, why not?
Yeah. Well, you do the wall for free. I mean, it's just basic. I think that's how most people work, isn't it? I don't know. You get a bit of publicity and then you sell prints off the back of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or the other way around, depending on how successful the print is first.
So your work is strongly figurative. There's always a figure of some kind.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a figure person.
Something a little bit heroic somehow about the subject matters you choose. I mean, apart from the seagulls one.
Yeah, that again, that was just me trying to come up with a second album. And it was right. Well, yeah, male figure, front and center. That was Jesus breakdancing. How can I? Yeah, this has been really successful. How can I repeat that success? And then really, what I wanted to do, I wanted to do life painting, which is kind of what attracted me to the Breakdancing Jesus thing. It was almost a nude figure, and I really like painting muscle and bits of body and stuff. I'm not really into drapery or clothing or it's really complicated crap to paint. I want to paint a little bit of flesh, and so I was trying to follow that up. And so I guess all my figure stuff. So then did a sort of slightly homoerotic Neptune figure. Because going from the Jesus and the gold leaf and the glitter, I was trying to follow into a sort of neoclassical thing. So looking at Michelangelo's David or, that sort of stuff, which was a direct influence on the Neptune figure,
the
to be honest.
Piece, I mean, there's a huge public art piece in Brighton.
Yeah, so I can't remember what the budget was for that. 20,000, 40,000.
It was somewhere between that. I think. But did the painting come first, or did you make it for it?
Yeah, so that was good. So, how do you do a public art commission that has to be permanent?
So it was out to tender, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was another public art commission I won. Excuse me. And but the brief was it was going up on the side of a new build. That was the biggest building development in Brighton for however many years. And I'd won that competition before they'd actually even built the place. So I was just working off an architect's drawing. And then I had to wait 4 years, and this was over COVID as well. So I was delayed another fucking 2 years. So I then had to wait while they built the block of flats that my piece was going to go on. And the piece had to be permanent. It had to last the lifespan of the building. It had to be weatherproof and light fast. And I was like, well, a mural isn't going to survive those conditions.
Paint can't really do it, can it?
No. So back to your original question, did the painting happen first? Yes. I did a little painting that I then photographed, and that was then printed onto porcelain tiles. And so the image was then kiln fired into the actual glaze. But it was blown up 10 times. So something that was 1 meter high in my studio then became 10 meters high out in real life. And so I really liked the idea that a little brush mark like that would be something like that. In fact, I've got, I could show you a tile.
I'd love to see a tile.
Let me see. And I've also got the original. But there we go.
And
there we go.
What a tasty tile. Amazing. So how come you got one? I mean, did you just get
so this was a test tile. But what was really attractive, the way that was just a little flick of a brush.
Wow, it's not pixelated.
No.
So they're all made of this size.
They're all porcelain. And that's in the glaze. It's got a matte finish to it.
So this is never going to fade, I tell
No,
you. This
no,
is
it can't. It's baked into the actual porcelain tile itself.
Wow.
But that eyeball there, there's no more than that. So that's 10 times its size.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
What a great thing to have.
Well, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with it. I can't really do my bathroom with it.
That's a nice piece.
Yeah.
So they're all the body's made out of tiles that size.
Yeah, so that's that image. It's all been tessellated together.
And then there's this, I seem to remember you saying something about you wanted it to have copper in the background.
Yeah, so it was Neptune. So, you know, I'm thinking about Poseidon. I'm thinking about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I knew the whole thing needed to look antique. Plus, it's what I do in film anyway, which is make stuff look old. So I knew I wanted it to have an age to it. And I had a budget to play with to use some materials. So I did not a semi-bas relief, but it was a geometric design. So I used these were water jet cut to fit into the silhouette, and then the steel was laser jet cut.
So that steel, the kind of, it looks like a kind of fishing net.
It's a fishing net pattern is all laser cut steel. I originally wanted it to be Corten, so that Corten steel, which rusts, it turns orange and then goes black, you know, and but they didn't want rust stains down the side of the building. I suppose
it would have done, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So, and I was looking at, you know, copper roofs and things like that. So aged copper, verdigris. And so all the metal bits were then aged with verdigris by a film scenic friend of
copper. It is copper then.
No. It's actually it's aluminium. It's made out of aluminium. But then I got one of my film set friends to paint it with a verdigris and make it look real. Yeah,
it's an amazing and immense piece. You count there's like 3 balconies going up on the right hand side, and I mean, just to walk up the street is just and see it is just amazing, really, isn't it?
It's funny. It's weird having something of yours that's permanent.
I suppose you're not used to that.
No, well,
with your filmic work.
Yeah, but even most street pieces you do, they've got a certain lifespan.
True, you don't expect to see it again, do you?
And then the funny thing is, sort of coming out of Morrison's car park. I've just done my supermarket shopping, and then because the car park's raised, I'm on the same level as the thing. It's very, it's quite a surreal thing.
And in the
Brighton Pier.
Yeah, they've
got Brighton Pier.
They've got
the beer house. Oh yeah, I've got a print in the beer house.
They've got the print in there.
Yeah.
With the gold leaf, it's great. A great thing to see. Amazing thing to have.
So I've just been lucky, and that's
how you see it then. Luck.
Yeah,
absolutely. Bit of hustle.
Yeah, very little. so I got to Brighton, painted the angel. Off the back of that, I got the Brighton Pier. And then off the back of the Brighton Pier, I then got the Neptune.
Oh, right,
yeah.
I've not seen the pier one up close. Can you walk in front of it, or is it on the edge?
No, there's like a 3 or 4 foot gap, but behind it so you can't stand back from it. Otherwise,
you didn't paint it in situ.
Yeah, I did. so it's on the back of the ghost train. And there's a little sort of bit of the pier that's about 3 or 4 foot wide that you can walk down the side of it. But I was up on scaffolding that was the width of that bit of pier, and so couldn't stand back from it. And there was no way to judge the scale of that. And it was 10 meters high, 25 meters wide.
Wow, it's bigger than I thought.
Trying to paint an image that you can't stand back from more than 3 or 4 foot. So in order for me to see it in its entirety, was come off the 5 flights of scaffolding, go to the end of the pier, then walk half a mile up the beach and sit outside the Fortuna wall, which was the only place I could be far enough. People say, oh, you need to get back from your painting, to stand back from your painting to have a look at it.
They would have had planks and scaffold in front of it anyways.
Yeah, and netting and all sorts of shit. So it was trying to work on something that scale where you can never, you just can't judge it. You can't.
So you never knew what it was going to be like exactly until it was all finished?
No, it was a theory. Yeah.
Did you grid it up? How did you?
Yeah, so that was gridded up. So there are ways. There's loads of different ways to do it, and some artists have different styles. But I gridded that up to the width of a plot printer, and I know that a plot printer prints out sheets of paper at 84 centimeters or 90 centimeters, something like that. And so it's very much like hanging wallpaper. You get a drop and that's your image, and then you'll get another drop. And I worked my way across 20 meters with these drops of wallpaper that had the outline printed on it, and then using the sign writer's technique of just pouncing it. So this
is a specialist tool, isn't it?
It's just a little spoke with needles on it, and you roll it across the paper, and it puts perforations in the paper. You put the paper against the canvas or whatever substrate you're painting onto, and you pounce it with chalk dust or an aerosol, and you spray through the perforations of the paper. Take that paper down. You've then got a dotted line showing you, giving you a guide to where your image is. Of course, you could freehand it. You could grid it up and technically do it that way. But I prefer to have large bits of paper flying around in the wind.
Yeah, I bet it was bloody windy. Madness. Wow. That's kind of brought us up to date, but you seem to have gone off onto another tangent completely. I can see things that look like kind of old military and brand new sort of
So
robot tech kind of things.
I'm now on my difficult second album.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things is trying to find something to paint and how to paint it, and being a figure painter working in scales. I get these little models, the best that I could find, whose joints, toes, fingers are all infinitely adjustable.
Yeah.
And so this is my way in. So I kind of make up my compositions with loads of scale bits of doll's house furniture and some Japanese robots and things. And I'm kind of building my compositions on the table. I'll set up whatever my image is, photograph it, because these are all adjustable, and then I'll just put in a background. And so, for example, with the figures, I will then replace the figure with a real life photo shoot. So once I've established my pose of how I want that person to be.
So this is compositional then?
Yeah. Then I'll go out there with the printout of that image and then reconstruct that pose with a real person and drop them in it. So it's a bit weird. I've got a costume department, but this little figure here is my little Don Quixote type character.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But he's been painted like that because he's just there for composition. But then if you come over here to the wardrobe department. Yeah.
Oh, you've got the actual.
You'll see that I actually have the uniforms of the characters.
Wow. So this is for your.
So there's a whole costume wardrobe department. There's a props department. And all of these things loop in to setting up the image here. So I'll take a photograph of that, and then I'll put it all together on the computer in Photoshop. Oh, hold on, like this. Hold on.
Oh, let's not look at his passwords.
That's all right. It's only password. But yeah.
Right. So you've got your.
So you see that figure there comes from a photo shoot that I've done in real life. That's my son. That's him wearing the costume. That is the robot that you see on the table.
But and you found an image of a donkey. And...
So that's AI. So there's a bit of AI. Yes, I'm yeah. Well, that's what it's there for, isn't it?
Well, it should be, yeah.
So there's a bit of artificial intelligence involved. There's
but only in the what would you say?
Dropping in the background.
Yeah, but it will become painted, right?
There's some scale models involved. There's costumes involved. There's props involved, and it's all how you would make a film if you were doing Star Wars today. It'd be a combination of all of those elements coming together to create an image. So
what are you trying to do? What's happening here?
So it's a story of Don Quixote.
Ah.
So my son is Sancho Panza and Don Quixote here, but it's been updated. So instead of windmills he's charging at wind turbines. And Don Quixote is I've anglicised him, but he's a Chelsea pensioner. So yeah, so he in the book he thinks of himself as a chivalrous knight, and so it made sense for me to think of him as a retired war veteran of another era of which the Second World War is further away. Do you know what I mean? So I just and the First World War even. So drew that parallel with it.
Amazing. Well, you really are going into it and making like proper productions, more so than any other painters that I know, really.
Well, it's just an idea, and it's just trying to bring an idea to life. So that involves, there's if you've got a story in your head, how do you visualize it? And I need stuff to draw from, so I need models and reference, and so the closest I can come to creating something that's in my head is by using scale models and actual life. So, setting something up like this at scale, then dropping in the elements that I need that I've photographed in real life with a combination of special effects, possibly, I hate to walk off camera, but, I've even got bits of moss for my ground, for my background, and you make up the whole scene with bits of props and bits of.
You're refining the idea.
Real scale wind turbines, and
So you gradually move towards the refinement of, and the streamlining maybe of what the image will end up being, to get it to be as true as.
Yeah, but it means rather than typing in a couple of prompts into AI, because we could all do this, I wouldn't even need to get all the models, but I can control down to the fingertip how I want this scene to be. So I've got overall God mode control over constructing a scene with models and things. And how else are you going to draw that? I can draw that shit from my head.
No, I could.
And I need to light it, and I want all that. I want control over all of that sort of stuff.
I think if you did draw it from your head, it would actually come out with a different aesthetic, wouldn't it? Than
completely.
A bit like my mate Jason.
Probably just look like Matchstick Man.
Well, Jason Brashill, he used to work for 2000 AD, and that style sort of definitely goes towards a certain aesthetic that you wouldn't really get with the real world objects. This sort of the sort of.
Well, you want the lighting just right, and then also I come from film world, so I look at a lot of concept art. And there's another guy who's done the books. He's got a series coming out on Netflix this month. What the fuck's his name? Sigma something, some Nordic dude. Anyway, but it's all drawn on computer, but it's very brushworky. And so it looks like concept art, and that's kind of where I'm going into. Plus the whole coming out of black as well as another scenic art trick.
Do you like that?
So all of these BBC trained scenic artists, when they work on a backing, and it's a BBC tradition, is that the cycloramas, they're the 20-foot high, 30-foot high backings that will encircle a set build.
Yeah.
So instead of doing green screen or CGI, they'll have someone like me that will come along and paint a perspective or a background or a landscape just to situate that set build in reality. Increasingly, it's going more green screen, but there are still people that prefer a hand-painted one because it can be lit in different ways, and also CGI and digital technologies tend to fade. If you look at old Jurassic Park movies, you can see where the green screen cutout is.
Right, yeah. And it's not that it deteriorates. I mean, it gets superseded and you can see the flaws.
Yeah, or it just doesn't look real. And sometimes, weirdly, a painting looks more real than a photograph. So they established that the best way to do it in the most economical way in terms of time, money, and effort was to paint out of black. So it only takes a couple of hits of white for you to indicate a windsill or a couple of edges of a brick. It's like 5 seconds with a 4-inch brush in a burnt sienna or something, and suddenly a whole brick wall your mind makes it up because you fill in the blanks, and that's what the human brain does, and that's why people paint it out with black. And
I mean, I it's something that I've done in the past, but I sort of find it interesting, sort of almost philosophically, where you're painting light. You're only painting light,
and you're painting negative shapes as well. So you look, rather than looking at, it's a whole left brain kind of thing to work like that.
It does seem not intuitive.
Yeah.
When you first suggest to somebody to do that, but
I'll tell you what, the classic visual example is the illusion of a candlestick. Do you see the face? Do you see two silhouettes of faces kissing each other, or do you see the black candlestick in the middle?
Yeah, that's right. So positive and negative.
Yeah,
this is what we taught at art college, isn't it? To draw negative spaces.
Yeah, exactly. And it really helps. If you're on a life drawing, you've got a figure sat on a chair or whatever it is. Sometimes it's far easier to draw the reverse than it is to actually draw the figure. It's
true. The proportions seem to come out a little truer sometimes when you're not so hard and focused.
I think because you see the bigger scale, don't you? Rather than getting all macro on, trying to move out from an elbow to a wrist joint or something. It's far easier to look outside of the arm and see that space rather than that space.
So amongst all of this work, what do you have a favourite thing that you like to do? Maybe you're being drawn to it and that is what you're doing. Do you like to paint canvas stuff, or do you like to paint streets? Or
that's I'm more in. It's the idea that captures me. The tech, and then from thereafter, it's just technical execution.
Do you use oil paint?
I am an oil painter, first and foremost.
Oh, I didn't realise.
Yeah.
You were using for the Poseidon, for instance. I presume that was acrylic for some reason.
No, that's oil. That's oil. As I was saying to you earlier about going to art school, a life drawing school. I was taught to paint in oils. Yeah, not and that's my first training.
Do you use
is in oils.
It dries a bit quick for me.
No, I don't get on with them. I do. I have to for film, but.
There he is.
That's my son.
Wow, he's got a sink on the top.
Everything but the kitchen sink.
And the kitchen sink.
Which was this robot.
This is...
It's Brighton.
It's got chalk. It's got pastel. It's pastel. It's all pastel and charcoal. Pastel,
yeah.
Nice.
I think it's another conversation I would like to have with you when we're not, you know what I mean? Just me and you having a chat and comparing artist notes rather than, because this isn't how I would talk to you or what we would discuss if we weren't filming it. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a useful thing. I mean, the idea of giving a window into an artist's ideas, their techniques and all of that, I think it's inspirational for people.
Yeah, it is. But, I would go on a much deeper waffle if it was just me and you over a pint. Do you know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Seeing as it's about you, me interviewing you, you're more likely to go on a monologue.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas if it was me and you just drinking, having a pint, it would go back and forth a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you scale your shit up?
Yeah, exactly. I've got me.
No,
not telling you.
No, I use the Griselle technique.
Actually, I do remember you telling me about Griselle.
We had a little chat about that once, didn't we?
Yeah, because you're just so knowledgeable about sort of techniques through history and all of that.
Yeah,
such a wealth of techniques that you draw.
Yeah, well, you've got to remember. I went to a proper, figurative oil painting art school, and I was and I went into all my history and all the techniques, and it was, you wouldn't get that at St Martin's anymore. It was one of the last art schools that still did etching or still had a stone for fucking
lithograph. Yeah.
You wouldn't find that in St Martin's anymore. It's all banks of computers and a tiny little space. And
They don't really teach techniques anymore.
No, exactly. And it was one of the last art schools that had that tradition. And I was really lucky, and I was grounded in that. And so I think a lot of people don't. I'm not sure people really get that, people think, oh, am I a graffiti artist, or he does murals, but they don't really get that there's a lot of self-referential art history knowingness in my head that and sometimes I'm making in jokes about art that a lot of people might not get.
I might not, Yeah, I've not had this schooling. I've just had to teach myself.
Yeah. And for a self-taught man, you're one of the most knowledgeable. If I, who else would know about Griset, unless they knew about Mantegna, or
I don't know what that is.
Mantegna, like a painter that painted in Griset, and unless they saw that Royal Academy exhibition, which when the first time I came across that term, and then discovered that Griset was black and grey, and what were we arguing about? Whether it was something else, I can't remember.
I think he said I was doing it wrong. But you got to experiment with these things and see whether it's for you.
Yeah.
But it did lead me on into glazes. I really love to paint with glazes and sort of attenuating colours and making them richer or cooler.
And I've got to hand it to you. The way you're breaking down the CMYK shit, and I think you're doing some really quite groundbreaking, but you are addressing it and taking it apart like no one else really has, and using a printing process to work through how you paint and how that could work in paint. I'm not aware of many other artists that have explored it in quite the same way.
Well, maybe if I'd had the grounding you'd have, I wouldn't really be taking liberties with it in that way.
Well, sometimes it's best not to know, isn't it? Yeah.
Ignorance
Just press the don't push this button and see what happens.
It's been really great. Someone's going to have to interview me. I always say this, but I don't know. I really enjoyed it, just sort of coming into your world and just seeing this kind of cave of creativity. So everything is poised, ready for action. You can see sort of all these sort of trails that are going to lead up to some piece. I mean, is this going to be a canvas in the end?
I don't know. I've just got to bang out. What I've got inside me is a narrative at the moment. And so the reason I'm drawing is to try and work through the idea as fast as possible without spending 3 months on a canvas. So at the moment, chalks and Conte pencils, and it's like storyboard. I've almost got a film in my head that I'm trying to get out as fast as possible, which is why I'm drawing rather than painting. Do these become oil paintings? I'm not sure if they're worthy of the investment. I can certainly see them as murals and street art pieces, and I have a wall in mind. Locally in Brighton.
Enough said.
It's mine. But I've got an idea. This Don Quixote story. I feel like I've got a big idea, and it's something that artists search for all their careers. And I know that you had one with your muse, and
that was it.
Feel like I've finally found an idea big enough that I can do multiple variations of. Whereas always the problem is I'll have an idea and I can work out 1, 2, maybe 3 executions of that one idea. But you need an overarching theory or an overarching idea. And if you're a figurative artist, you generally need to resort to a narrative. So you've got to have a story to tell if you haven't got a theory to discuss.
Right, yeah.
And so I have a story to tell, and I have a sequence of images that I'm not sure in quite what order, but that are infinitely expandable, that I could see myself working through the next 5 or 10 years painting from. And that's a big idea. And that's the hardest thing about, you know, yeah, can you paint well? Yeah, okay, but what are you painting? If it's just a fucking vase of flowers, it's no good. So you've got to have something there. And I think I've got that finally. I'm not really worried about how I paint it, but I've got something to say.
Well, we're going to have to come back in a few years
Yeah.
and see what came, the fruit of this seed.
Yeah, the second album. Hopefully when you come back, it'll be my third.
Yeah, hopefully. Cheers, Cosmo.
Cheers, Rick.